Hello, today we're going to talk about the characters within wholes, and there are lots of them. Let's go. Characterization is the process where the writer reveals or shows the personality of the character through description. It goes beyond names, but you have to admit the names in this book are as great as the characters themselves. Who is the main character in Holes? The main character is Stanley Yelnats, the fourth. Nickname at Camp Green Lake was Caveman. All my life, I seemed to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. My grandfather, Stanley Yelnats II, says it's because of the 150-year family curse. Well, I don't really believe in the family curse, but when things go wrong, it kind of helps to be able to blame it on something. And for me, things went wrong a lot. Grandpa says our destiny's sealed. Could a pair of shoes falling from the sky really be part of my destiny? You see, my father, Stanley Yelnats III, is an inventor, and for the last few years, he's been trying to find a cure for foot odor. This is from Stanley narrating the beginning of the movie. Okay, there are two types of characterization: direct characterization and indirect characterization. Okay, so you're going to talk about the person, what we know directly about them, and then indirectly from another source, or we're gaining information by what others tell. And we'll talk about that in a little later, okay, at a little later time. Right now, we have direct and indirect characterization. So for example, let's talk about rumors. I'll give you an example of something direct. So if I want to say to my best friend, I'll say directly to her, "Hey Jen, I saw Rob in the next room, and he was with a new girl, and I think they were hugging." Oh, so now Jen goes and tells her sister. Her sister, Phoebe. Well, "Hey Phoebe, did you hear about Rob?" Yeah. Well, Britton saw him in the other room, and he was hugging another girl. So how did Phoebe know this information? She knew that she got this information indirectly from Jen, not from me, Britton. That's the difference between direct and indirect. Okay, let's move on. Okay, we have direct characterization now again. Tells the audience what the personality of the character is. An example: the patient boy and the quiet girl were both well-mannered and did not disobey their mother. That's in quotations. So if something is in quotations, that is something that has been directly said by another person or character, wherever it comes from, whether it's speech or it's written. It's a direct uh, communication. Explanation: the author is directly telling the audience the personality of these two children. The boy is patient and the girl is quiet. That we know directly. Indirect characterization gets a little wonky. Here we go, but it's not too bad, so just follow me. It shows things that reveal the personality of a character. There are 5 different methods of indirect characterization, and they are speech. What does the character say? How does the character speak? Thoughts. What is shown through the character's private thoughts and feelings. 3, the effect on others. What is revealed by the character's effect on other people? How do other characters feel or behave in reaction to the character? 4, actions. What does the character do? How does the character behave? And finally, looks. What does the character look like? Give a description of what this character looked like. We have to use lots of adjectives when we're giving description, so think about that. Examples from Holes itself. Direct characterization. This is the easier type of characterization to identify. It is simply when the narrator or the first person character tells the reader directly what they are thinking or doing. The narrator of whole sometimes tells us directly what a character is like, mostly Stanley, since he is the protagonist or main character. And then we have down below, we have the definition of a protagonist coming from ancient Greek, and you can read about that. Protagonist is the main character around which the whole story revolves. The decisions made by this character will be affected by a conflict from within or eternally through another character, nature, technology, society, or the fates, or God if you wish. An antagonist, this is the character or group of characters that causes the conflict for the protagonist. However, the antagonist could be the protagonist who is torn by a problem from within. Most times something external is causing the problem. A group of people causing the conflict would be considered society, perhaps the members of a team, community, or institution. Additionally, the antagonist could be part of nature, such as an animal, the weather, a mountain, or a lake. Finally, if the conflict comes from something out of the character's control, the antagonist is fate or God. Direct character examples. Stanley doesn't like conflict. The last thing he wanted to do after killing himself all day on the lake was to get into a fight with a boy called the Caveman. He was glad X-Ray and Armpit had come to his rescue. This is a direct quote from Stanley. Here, Stanley doesn't even realize he's being called Caveman as his new nickname. He understands about who the leader of the group is. Stanley had never really thought about digging holes before. He knew better than to tell X-Ray he wasn't right. He is really tired after the first hole. Every muscle and joint in his body ached as he tried to get out of bed. He didn't think it was possible, but his body hurt more than the day before. Okay, so these are direct ways that the narrator is describing the character of Stanley Yelnats, and they are in quotations. And they're giving you clues about who Stanley is and lots of adjectives and descriptions. Indirect characterization. There are a few ways the reader can see indirect characterization. Through speech, thoughts, effect on others, actions, and looks. We call this STEAL, S-T-E-A-L, if you want to remember it that way. It's a cool way to remember indirect characterization. So if you can remember the word STEAL, you can remember all these things. Types of indirect characterization. So speech, for example, the warden says, and the next time I ask you to do something, I expect you to do it without questioning my authority. If it's too much trouble for you to fill in a canteen, I'll give you a shovel. You can dig the hole, and the caveman can fill the canteen. This shows that the warden has the most authority at the camp. She gives orders and expects everyone to follow them. Next, thoughts. We can tell characterization through thoughts. We see Stanley thinking. Stanley wondered about trying to secretly take the tube directly to the warden. He could explain the situation to the warden, and the warden might make up an excuse for giving him the day off, so X-Ray wouldn't suspect. This shows that Stanley tries to think of ways to survive in the camp without getting into trouble with X-Ray or anyone else. Effect on others. Stanley is accepted by X-Ray when he suggests giving the gold tube to Mr. Pendanski in the morning instead of right away. X-Ray smiled. Good thinking, caveman. He dropped the tube into a large pocket on the right leg of his dirty orange pants. When the water truck came, Stanley started to take his place at the end of the line, but X-Ray told him to get behind Magnet in front of Zero. Okay, so because Stanley has a good suggestion about what to do with the tube that will guarantee X-Ray gets nearly a whole day off instead of just a few hours, he's able to advance his position in the group. This is important to his survival. So Stanley realizes this, and there is a way that he does that, and he acquires a bumping up his position, in other words. Actions. Stanley is curious and smart. He dug his shovel back into the earth, scooped out some more dirt, and lifted it over his dirt pile. But instead of dumping it there, he tossed it off to the side. His curiosity had gotten the better of him. He climbed up and out of his hole and sifted his fingers through the dirt pile. Stanley can't resist looking to see if he had dug something out of the dirt, even though he had promised to give anything he found to X-ray. So we learn what he does by his actions. This is very telling about a person's character, what they do. A lot of people say things and they don't back it up by the things that they do. And what does this tell us about Stanley? Okay, the next one, looks. Zero is the smallest kid and he is the quietest. When he smiles, it's a shock. Even Zero smiled. It was the first time Stanley had ever seen Zero smile. And it goes on and on. Okay. Only Stanley's comment makes Zero smile. Possibly he likes Stanley. He seems to be okay with him. Blah, 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 however. And we can go into detail, but what I wanted to talk about is the look, the smiling. That's a physical characteristic of someone, and there is meaning behind that, and it tells us about the character. All right, we've talked a lot about characterization, blah, 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 lots of fancy words. What I want you to come away with this is how to describe something. We describe something with a lot of adjectives, and there are ways we can describe them. We can describe them using direct methods and indirect methods. Sometimes indirect is the most fun and the most telling about a character. So now is your chance to practice writing your own character, your favorite character from Holes, and just remember to include the appearance of your character, their personality, wow adjectives, very colorful language, in other words, powerful verbs, action, similes and metaphors, we learned about that, so you're all set, and any extra interesting features that you might want to add. All right, so I hope that helps, and good luck to writing your own character description.